Welcome to the Introspective Collective podcast. Today's topic is real talk. I'm not okay.
Hello, listeners. Today we're going to have just that real talk. And the topic of real talk, I'm not okay, kind of comes about because I think, in general, we tend to say, someone asks, how are you today? And you'll be like, I'm good, I'm okay. But oftentimes, really, we're not, but we're just being polite and or if we really divulge how we really feel, does that person on the other side, do we perceive that other person really cares, or do we not want to burden them with our issues? So then we just kind of go on about our days and we might internalize it, not process it, we're stressed out, we feel unsupported or whatever. But how does that affect us? And I think, when I say real talk, we all, kind of use the term real talk, keeping it real, being honest. I'm going to, give it to you straight. But do we really?
Mm,
Because
good point.
oftentimes we don't. And hey, I think we all can relate to, there are days where we are really not okay, but we're socialized to a certain way in general. The old saying, never let them see you sweat.
Right.
I'm good, I got to keep it pushing, and all of those things. But when you think about that, those comments indicate that there's some stress, there's some things that's going on that really need to be addressed, but we're not even giving ourselves the permission to allow ourselves to feel. And I understand, and I'll just say, in general, I understand, because oftentimes we have obligations, we have to go to work, we have children, we have things, so we feel that we don't have the opportunity to, or we can't allow ourselves to just even deal with our emotions. And I understand too, sometimes we feel like if we open up to those emotions, then it's just going to all fall apart, and we literally are just trying to keep it together. But what happens with all of that? Hence anxiety, depression, the self-medicating, the not taking care of ourselves. Some of the things that we talked about in our previous podcast can lead to overeating, and all of those things. So when do we start being honest and saying, I'm not okay? And I'll use myself as example. There's been times where, I'm not okay, whatever that is. Maybe I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I got a lot to do. And, just trying to figure it out. And I remember a scenario a while back that I was talking with a couple of people, and we was just joking in the morning, and we kind of had this conversation. We was like, well, how are you doing today? And I don't know how spontaneously we all just said, but what if we was honest and said, I'm not having a good day? Who really is going to be whoever's on the receiving end of that, who's honestly going to take the time and say, okay, I'm listening? Because maybe that person is pressed for time, right? Maybe on the receiving end, you really don't want to hear what that other person has to say. And then what happens to the person that just happens to divulge in that moment, hey, I'm not okay. So what do we do with that? Like, how do we step up and be there for others if they say that they're not okay? And how, if you're the individual that's not feeling okay, allow yourself to have the permission to honestly say that I'm not okay? And I think what kind of prevents people from opening up to is they may not have a support system. They may not feel that people care, or because they're caring, they are shouldering all of these burdens because they don't feel like they don't want to burden someone else. So, you
I,
know, go ahead,
I
press.
think those are some, really, really important points. I think that we're socialized a lot of times, particularly in our country, and I'll say our culture, like you said, just to keep it pushing a lot of times when we're not okay. And I think it's important for those of us who ask others, are you okay? I think um, we need to be genuine in that. And, there's the hello, how you doing today? The casual, what I would call first level or surface level, how are you doing? But, there are times when there's people in your space where we need to intentionally take time to check on them to make sure they're okay, like not in passing, but pull them to the side and intentionally check on them, right? And a lot of times we don't do that. And I would also say for the givers in our society, those that are charged with or take on the responsibility of taking care of others, that we make it a point or be intentional about our self-care, right? And our self-love. And it's out of that self-love that we should take time and attention and not see it as not being strong or not being responsible, to take that time for yourself, so that's very necessary to take care of ourselves and take that responsibility, with all that we have on our shoulders. If I'm not at my best for me, how can I be at my best for others?
Well, Preston and Des, I think this is a really good topic because sometimes you're right. And we've said this, but I'm being very intentional in how I express this. Have you ever walked past someone and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And they say, "Okay." Do you keep going? "Okay, have a good day." Or do you stop and say, "That okay didn't sound really okay"? You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that does make, we all do this. We might not even hear the person's response because our lives, our days are so busy, that sometimes, as we used to say it, you're on automatic. You're just phoning it in. Are you really present? Are you really listening, or are you just going through the motions? And even a self check-in. Am I really okay?
True.
Right?
Right.
True. So to to continue the discussion, I'm not okay, even goes a little deeper. If I think about women in general, and this is a topic to discuss, elaborate about on a different podcast. But when you think about women oftentimes now have the role of being in the workforce, taking care of the families, and it's all this responsibility that as I refer to the superwoman syndrome, that women now have, like, they got to juggle all of these things, which is really impossible. And they feel like they're failing, if they can't really live up to these unrealistic expectations. And to say that I'm not okay may be perceived as a sign of weakness. What do you mean? And then I'll say, if I bring it even to another level, when you talk of women of color, African American women, I say from the time we come out of the birth canal, we're told you're going to have to be strong, you're going to have to be independent, self-sufficient, don't depend on anybody. It's all of these unrealistic expectations. So here we are trying to live up to all of that. And then when things start to crash in, then instead of being able to look at it objectively and give yourself grace and be realistic, then you think like, okay, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? And then if we look at our grandmother and our mothers and our aunties, then we're like, well, they did it. But then if we really look at them, did they do it well? Were they stressed? Did we not see they were irritable? Did we not see at times they might have been depressed? But hey, this is just what we do. So when do we say, but even in those expectations, that is not okay, because we're trying to live up to the impossible. So where do we start to just say, you know what? I'm not okay. This is not okay. And what needs to happen differently? How do we learn to advocate for ourselves and start to make a shift so that we can go from thriving to surviving, or allowing ourselves to ask for help, allowing ourselves to tap into supports, because oftentimes people may not feel like they have a support system, but is that because in their minds, they perceive that I should be doing all of this myself, when sometimes what they say, you have not because you ask not. So a person can't be there for you if they don't even know that they need to be there for you. And the example, and I know men go through this as well, because men are, supposed to be the protectors and the providers. So they internalize a lot too, that they don't want to be perceived as weak. So who do they go to? And I think it may be a little harder for men as well, because they're socialized to not really feel and just do. So when they're not okay, then what? And then hence some of the, I guess, the negative coping mechanisms that may come into play that can also exacerbate an already bad situation.
Good point. And as the man on the panel here, first I do have to step up and say that I recognize that women, particularly women of color, have carried a burden, in the community that has been, disproportionate. The division of labor, whether it be in the household or the community, has been lopsided. It's been unfair, and I recognize that. I have a mother, I have a wife, I have daughters, and I talk to a number of people. And so that is unfortunately and unfairly the case. You're expected to go to work, full time, and then come home and still be the provider in the house, so to speak. And, it's often unspoken, but there is a greater demand and expectation of our counterparts and our mothers and sisters, than it should be. So it does require, I know as a man, it requires me to be more intentional in making sure I'm stepping up in ways to make sure that I'm being, as supportive, as I can be, and that I'm checking on my, wife, my sisters, my colleagues, to make sure that they're okay, So yes, you bring up a really good, point with what a woman has to carry, that superwoman, that there's that expectation, and it's unfair. So we really do need to examine that and look at that individually, but also as a community.
Yes, I certainly agree that even what you're saying, Preston, as males, to consider females too, we need to sometimes ask our male family members, because we know there's that tendency, as Des earlier spoke about, to not say what's really going on. Because why?
Yeah.
We're always supposed to operate business as usual.
Right.
And it's not always business as usual. If nothing else, coming through this pandemic, I believe we've learned that there are so many things people are dealing with that we have no idea, and how we have to be present. And as we had said in some of our other conversations, we are our brothers and sisters keepers at some point, to be there for one another emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And really to make the time, because sometimes we get it. It's not, in fairness, most people have a lot going on, and we get it. And it's like, you're barely treading water yourself. How can you, like, your heart might be in the right place, I want to, but I'm barely keeping myself together. So I get that. That is realistic. Those are facts. However, speaking to, as Paula mentioned, am I my brother's sister's keeper? It's like, okay, but you know what? If not you, then who? Because in that moment, it could be a pivotal moment of that person just needs to know that someone cares. And that could be, just all that they need, Maybe they just need a hug. Maybe they just need, like, you know what, let's just put everything on the shelf for a minute and let's just take a walk in the park. Or do you want to grab coffee? And I can say I have been fortunate enough to have a good support system that, my female friends we do check in on each other. And if we are aware, hence people have to disclose that they are going through something, even if it's a morning text like, hey, you're on my mind, I'm thinking about you, I'm sending you, love and hugs and all those things, that can make a big difference to people. So sometimes, yes, you may not have a lot of time, but just checking in or saying, okay, I know we're both busy, I just want to make sure you're okay. If you need to talk, we can, I'll make sure that I'm available. If you need to, let's schedule a time to like get together, so that way you are more intentional where you can be totally present. But I think, and even whether it's for our friends or our husbands or sons or brothers, for all of us, and for men to do that for each other as well. And I know it may be a little harder for men, but somewhere we need to make sure that we're all okay. And like you say, if you recognize that someone's not okay, and even if you say, you know what, I see that you're not okay, I just want to know that I'm here for you. Yeah, maybe I do need to head out to work or whatever, and I get it, but I do care. I'm here for you. I can talk to you on my way to work. I can call you on my way home. It might be calling you on the way to the grocery store, whatever. But just taking an extra few minutes can make the difference. Just sometimes people just need to know that they care, or sometimes people just need to get it off their chests and say it out loud so that they can feel validated that they are important.
Well, and something that I'm thinking of just by what you just shared, Des, there are some things that we may or may not remember. Back in the day, I know as I was growing up, there was always time to sit and talk to grandmom at the kitchen table or an elderly person. I say grandmom because she was the matriarch of our family on my mother's side. And she would have her postum in the morning. And I remember times where, she would sit there at the table, and I noticed, I was a teenager, but I kind of remember how someone would wait till no one else was in the house, one of my cousins, one of my uncles or my aunts, and they would just say, Corrine, can we talk? And she would just sit there and listen. And, that may be missing as we speak in our generation. It's just I forget how they used to say it. It's a tradition that has been lost due to our scheduled and busy lives.
Yes.
We know that there are just tons of wisdom that are in each of our families. We may be that person in our family, but we also need someone to listen to us. So sometimes I think going back to those basic patterns that once, and as I'm going to say it, was the bridge that got us over, being able to tap into the wisdom of our elders and having those conversations. I think I heard one of you say, I think we know there is a stigma in our communities about seeking out help from a therapist, because the first thing we want to say, I'm not crazy, I don't need that.
Right.
But we all need one another. True. We may have to say not Auntie Chatty Kathy, because she'll tell everybody's business.
That's
Right,
true.
right.
You
You gotta know who to go to, right?
Right. But I think that's a missing or a bygone tradition that we need to think about, because there was always someone in the family I remember you could go to. Like, I remember there was Aunt Pat I could go to because she was really smart and knew business. She was an HR person, so we could ask her questions. And then there was someone else who knew about cars. We could go ask them. But I want to say this: we all we got, and we all we need. Yes, there are places and spaces that we need to reach out outside of our community. I
Mhm.
said, but I think there are places and spaces where we need to look to one another to
Mm,
I agree.
yeah.
restore ourselves, replenish ourselves by working and supporting one another.
I agree.
Amen.
I agree, and I think, to add to that, the simple thing as the saying that I haven't heard this lately, which is a little disturbing, but the golden rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. And I say that in the context of, if it were you, would you want someone to be there for you? So, paying it forward or reciprocating or whatever it is, we get it. A lot of times it's never going to be a convenient time for someone to have issues, or maybe for us to reach out, but this is life. This is everyone's life. We all go through these things, if we're honest. That's why I say real talk. Let's be real with ourselves. Let's have real conversations, and let's just heal, because that's part of it too. Let's heal and support and love one another, because we all need it.
That's true.
All right.
Absolutely.
Mm,
So, with that being said, I guess we can wrap this up by saying, be real with yourself, be real with others, and we get it. We have to. I understand. We need to be selective on who we share certain things with, but hopefully, there's someone in your community, family, friend group, or whatever, that you feel like that you can trust, that you can just say that I'm not okay. And then on the other end of that, if we see or hear, we know the people that we deal with every day. You can hear it in their voice, you can see it, the way they walk, or now they seem disinterested in certain things. Just check in and be like, or you don't seem okay, and it's okay to not be okay. I think that's, if I leave us with anything today, it is okay to say that you're not okay, because the point is, there's a need, there's something lacking if you're not okay, and so that you can get what you need to, as Paula said, to restore. So that's what I will leave us with today.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
all right. I'm looking at about 22, 23 minutes, something like that.